grace and peace. Welcome to another episode of the TBT Show. I'm Anthony Moden and here with my partner in crime, Sean P. Aguilar. Sean, how are you today?
Man, better than I deserve.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Thankful for things being as well as they are.
As well as they are. Absolutely, I agree. To start us off today, I wanted to kind of readdress or give us some update as to some of the investigations that have been going on in Uvalde, Texas, around that deadly school shooting, and still our hearts and prayers go out to the families that have been affected. There have been a lot of stories that have surfaced about what happened after that shooter entered Robb Elementary School. One of the stories that I heard that kind of exposed, I guess, where we are as a society was written that one of the parents that was arrested said that there were a couple other officers or Border Patrol agents that got there, that their children were students in Robb Elementary, and so they entered the school, retrieved their children, and came back out of the school and waited for further instructions about how they were going to, enter and subdue this shooter. And so, and I said the very fact that there's yet another shooting in a school exposes where we are as a society, right? Mm-hmm. And so, after Columbine and after Sandy Hook and after Santa Fe and after El Paso and then after Buffalo, still nothing has been done legislatively for us to protect our children. That exposes where we are as a society. And then I thought about it. Do you know how messed up you have to be as a human to walk into a school where there's a deadly situation going on, a shooter, and you're a trained law enforcement agent of whatever agency, and you reach over children and leave them in harm's way to retrieve your own child and get them out to safety. It just kind of exposes where we are as a society. And so, and there's further investigation that is still going on. There's even been some other reports about exactly how long it took for anybody, any kind of law enforcement agent, to actually go in and subdue or ultimately take down this shooter. And even that frustrates me to a certain level. And so, again, as a society, we not only have to put the pressure on our legislators about doing something that protects our children, but we got to also start looking in the mirror about what's wrong with us. I couldn't, and Sean, I'm not a trained law enforcement agent, but if I had to walk in there with a slingshot, there's no way I could have got my child without doing my best, and get as many innocent children out of the building,
right,
as you possibly can. So even those stories kind of shine the light on where we are as a society.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, we have it painted on the side of our, patrol cars, that the mission of the police force is to protect and to serve.
Right.
But we see at Uvalde that they left our children unprotected,
right,
and only serve themselves,
right,
serve their own interests.
Right.
And again, like you, I'm not a trained law enforcement officer, but at the end of the day, just having the courage to protect those that don't have the ability to protect themselves would dictate that just as a man, right, you have the responsibility to try to protect and get those children out of harm's way, especially and now adding that you are a trained law enforcement officer, right, and you have the ability to defend yourself, and the police chief that was actually over, or he's the head of the DPS,
Okay.
talked about yesterday that it was disgraceful and that there didn't need to be a leader to organize this.
Right.
Just basic training.
Right.
You hear shots fired, you go towards those shots and you draw their fire away from the innocent and those that don't have the ability to protect yourself.
Right. You respond.
You respond. First responders, not first watchers.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so having that mission in mind to protect and serve, just that you don't need to have this handbook and go through all the rules and regs to understand these things.
Right.
And it's gotten so bad now in this country that our neighbors to the north, Canada, are looking at what's happening here, and they're taking action in their country based on what's happening here.
Wow.
Because it's been reported that Canada is freezing handgun sales and buying back assault-style weapons. Now, they don't have the problem, but they see that there is a problem, and they're taking preemptive action to make sure it does not become a problem for them, because they see that it has become a problem for us.
Right. And again, that's, we learned early on that, reaction is never the place you want to be.
Right.
You always want to be proactive. And America's in a very unique situation because we can be proactive and reactive at the same time. We can be proactive based on what's already happened. So based on what's already happened, we don't want it to happen again. So let's set in place some legislative policy that would, absorb that from happening. But again, our country is placed, we've placed the love of money over even the love of our own children, which is sad. And then to hear these type of stories says that, yeah, that's only symbolic of what's going on in the hearts of our society.
Right.
Because I couldn't leave anyone's child. It's almost like a firefighter.
Right.
Going in a house, saving his family, and leaving, others in the fire just because they're not kin to him. I couldn't leave anybody's child. Right. Given the opportunity, anybody's child behind.
Right.
Even if it meant, giving my own life for these children. And so, again, these kind of stories are only a bigger symbol of what's going on in our society. And I believe the events of Uvalde is really just kind of shine the light on where we are as a society. And it's it's not a good place. Yeah. It's not a good place.
And we've got to get around this polarization, in terms of there's got to be some moderate middle ground approach to common sense laws around guns.
Right.
And the two extremes are not going to happen. We're not going to be in a place where no one can have any guns, and we're not going to be in a place, and we shouldn't be in a place, I pray we're not in a place where anybody, anywhere can carry a gun without any checks, any balances, any license process. Neither one of those realities represent where I would want to live and raise my family in a country that allowed that, because we're not far from reinstituting the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
We're not. And the sad part is that there's other countries around the world that have guns just like we do, but they don't have these problems.
Right.
But it's because they have very strict processes for license, for training, amount of hours of training, background checks, counseling in some cases, statement of reason to own the gun. So the problem isn't just the guns themselves, because we see other countries around the world that can have guns.
Right.
But they're responsible with them.
Right.
And it's very strict. They're very strict on who can carry them. So we've just got to face the facts that we have a problem as a society as far as our relationship with guns and who uses them and how they're allowed to be used.
Right.
So,
right. And I think it's a society thing, just running from responsibility.
Right.
There's another old event that I wanna bring up, kind of with the same mind frame, just kind of running from responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday, Jada Pinkett Smith on a very popular Red Table Talk mentioned the events of Oscar night, and I wanna read a piece of the excerpts of what she said. She said on her show, that Red Table Talk show, "I'm using this moment to give our alopecia family an opportunity to talk about what it's like to have this condition and to inform people as to what alopecia actually is." So she's saying she's using this season to build a platform for those that have alopecia. So highlighting that night, she had to address it. So she says this: "Now, about Oscar night, my deepest hope is that these two intelligent, capable men have an opportunity to heal, talk this out, and reconcile. The state of our world today, we need them both. We actually need each other more now than ever before. Until then, Will and I will continue to do what we've done for the last 28 years, and that's keep figuring out this thing called life together. Thank you for listening." So even in her comments, she absorbs herself from her actions that night.
Mm-hmm.
So she's not responsible. She makes responsible the two men, Will and Chris. Mm-hmm. Now, of those two, the only thing that Chris did was allowed his face to be a landing spot for Will's hand.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there are two people responsible for the actions that night, and it's both Will and Jada.
Mm-hmm.
And until she accepts her role, responsibility for her role that night, and gives some decent, apology for manipulating Will's feelings, with ultimately manipulated his actions, and Will does something other than give some informal apology over social media, it will be what it is. But I think to those of us who are watching, it shows us that a lot of times situations aren't resolved because we run from our responsibility in those situations. So just as a culture, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with having faux pas. I think there's everything wrong with not being man enough or woman enough to stand up and say, "Hey, here's what I did.
Right.
I missed it. My apologies." And I think, we all are human enough to, to accept apologies and move on, and it's no big deal. But even in her comments, it kind of showed again that she's not quite ready to accept her role in that night. She's making everything about Will and Chris, and really Chris didn't do nothing wrong, but not ducking time.
Right.
But and again, it just shows us how that we run from responsibility when it's convenient.
Oh yeah, and make no mistake that this is spin of the highest caliber. Mm-hmm. This is Hollywood Jedi mind tricking on the part of Jada. So it's, hey, I know that the next time she speaks, everybody's expecting that she's going to address the events of that evening. But what I'll go ahead and do is couch that behind some alopecia,
right,
which is a super common condition that's just part of the aging process that half of us will experience.
She said that's not what it actually is.
Well, I understand what she, says, because that's what she wants you to focus on. It's just like a magician. A magician does not perform any actual magic, but rather they use sleight of hand, misdirection, in order to get you to think that you're seeing something that's not actually happening, or prevent you from seeing what's actually happening.
Right.
So it's the art of illusion.
Right.
And so Jada is giving us an example of her being a master Jedi in manipulation. Just like she manipulates Will, now she's trying to gaslight and manipulate Hollywood and American society at large.
Right.
But number one, as I said before, I'll say it again, in American society, accountability is kryptonite. So she's trying to stay away from the fray, be away from it and distance herself, misdirection. This isn't the story you're looking for. It's between them. It had nothing to do with me.
With anything else.
It had nothing to do with me. It's just between these guys, even though she's the one that basically sicked Will Smith on Chris Rock, being that Will Smith was openly laughing at the joke. Openly laughing at the joke until he got the biggest side eye from his wife. And then he was weaponized,
And then another part of her Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
That, hey, we need them both.
We need them both.
Don't punish Will.
Right.
Because
don't mess up my bag.
Because you're hurting my bag.
You're hurting my bag now.
And don't punish Will because we need them both.
We need them both. So it's not, okay, there's a winner and a loser out of this. It's time for healing. And yeah, as she previously posted on Instagram. So make no mistake about it. She's no dummy.
Yeah.
She knows exactly what she's doing every single step of the way.
Right.
And so, I tip my hat to the Master Jedi. You tried it. But we are aware of your schemes,
of your mind
of your tricks. And so, but most of Hollywood and American society would be like, oh, well, yeah, it's
right.
We do need both of them. They're pillars in Black Hollywood and da-da-da. And it sounds great, but yet that absolves her from accountability. And so now y'all don't mess with me and don't mess with what I've attached myself to, because I don't want to fumble the bag.
Right.
Type situation.
I want you to see Will in the same eyes you would see Chris.
Right. And the sad part is that she finds a way to, at the same time, you got to, in a way, admire the artistry here, because she finds a way to absolve herself, not support Will.
Right.
Because she kind of keeps Will and Chris equally supported by her statements.
Right.
But still come out trying to smell like a rose.
Right. Looking like, right.
Yeah. And I'm like, man.
Yeah. And
they don't teach that.
No, not at all. And
they don't teach that.
She had a couple months to think through that.
Oh, yeah. This is 100% planned.
Yeah.
100% planned. Make no mistake about it.
Right.
But yeah, running from accountability.
And okay. And so I want to address this, and this is a statement by someone that I look to, and I would consider him a model of sorts. And Pastor Jerry Carter made this statement, and I don't see anything inaccurate about the statement, but I do want to use his statement as a platform for greater conversation, because we're talking about, again, how we're running from responsibility and accountability. So Jerry Carter says, remote worship is no longer about safety, but it's become a crutch of the laziness of for some believers. Basically, It's not about safety from COVID. It's about being lazy, not wanting to get up and being in the fellowship, and using COVID as nothing but an excuse to do what you want to do anyway, which is sit at home. So, for a greater conversation about world, life, us, this generation, this culture, are we using COVID as an excuse to absorb ourselves from responsibility or obligation? Because it's not just church, and that's why I say it's really a greater conversation. It's not just church, even though we sit in church. I went to a comedy concert New Year's Eve, and it was packed.
Oh yeah,
they were selling standing room only tickets. And there's a list of great comics. Earthquake, DL Hughley, Eddie Griffin. There was some guys I wanted to see, hadn't seen in a while. And so I'm not saying anything about the show, but it was packed. Now,
right.
There was, I would say 50, 60, 70% of us with masks on. So there's still some level of comfort that was disturbed, because there was so many people, whatever. But it was packed. I've been to restaurants where it's been filled to capacity. So
yes, sir.
When it comes to entertainment, we're okay. Football games, basketball games. I've been to a couple of basketball games. So when it comes to entertainment, we're okay. When it comes to other aspects of life, graduations, this is a high graduation season and all that, we're okay. But when it comes to church and other areas of responsibility and obligation, have you ever tried to get some, food late night from some of these, fast food restaurants? It's like pulling teeth. I pulled up, and a couple nights ago, I was going to stop by Raising Cane's, get some on the way in. The line was out the driveway and up the freeway. And, and I'm like, I'm not waiting in that. A couple days later, I go to Raising Cane's just during the day. I ask, why was it so packed last night? And she's like, manager, we've been understaffed since COVID. So when it comes to entertainment, we're good. When it comes to other areas of life, we're okay. But when it comes to church, work, I read Elon Musk put it out today. Tesla employees, you either come back to work in office
or go work somewhere else,
or find another job. So
plain and simple.
Are we using COVID as an excuse?
Sure.
To be
COVID is now the panacea. It's the all-purpose excuse to do or not do whatever you don't want to do. So if you don't feel like doing it, then it's, the pandemic, can't make it. Got a baby shower in 2 months. Well, pandemic, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. Church, I feel more comfortable at home. So it's now there's a built-in all-purpose excuse to not do whatever it is that you don't want to do. And so if people don't want to work because they found out that they can draw money from the government for a significant period of time, in some cases, and I can tell you from what, because I work in corporate America, there was a time right when the pandemic was really, really high, that there were people that were either furloughed, laid off, or given, the opportunity to choose if they wanted to work or if they wanted to go ahead and take the furlough, right? And when they did the math, they could make more money staying at home than coming to work. So when you have Uncle Sam sending out the checks, then wait a minute, I can make more money staying at home a lot of people are gonna take that option. Now most of that's coming to a close.
Right.
But that's why you don't have people at Raising Cane's. You don't have people, and the line is around is out the door, out the parking lot, onto the street. It's because that person that was making maybe $10 an hour can make $4,000 a month.
Right.
And then if they have kids, $6,000 a month.
Right.
From the government to sit in the house and play Madden and watch Red Table Talk.
And then it makes it bad for people that didn't have a choice.
Right.
And again, we've become, in the two areas, and I'll say, I think the two areas that disturb me most about our culture and our generation is we have a sense of entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
Like we act like we live like we're
owed something.
Like that, certain phrases and life lessons and principles that we were given as children almost like no longer exist.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, we were told, 16, 17, you're looking for a job, you got to be out of the house at 6:30 because the early bird gets the worm.
Mm-hmm.
That
right.
And it was almost like every parent said that.
Right.
And it's like now to see how this generation moves, and
it's a sense of entitlement.
It's a sense of entitlement. Like we think we're owed something, and then if it's not the sense of entitlement, or maybe even a lot of instances attached to that, is this victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Like like we would rather lay down and play victim than get up and fight to be a victor, even if the situation is difficult.
Sure.
Whatever. And so I think those two things, and then COVID, and again, and I know a lot of people disagree, but I agree with Jerry Carter.
Yeah.
And not only that, like we were already seeing the decline of a culture and a generation prior to COVID, right? So before COVID, a whole bunch of people weren't coming to church anyway. Churches that were already streaming, their streaming was up,
right,
while in-person worship was down.
Yeah.
So COVID hits, we can have in-person worship, and I shared with a congregation that the only ones that really came back to church when COVID let up was those that actually missed church when they couldn't come. There were a lot of people that it was right up their alley to have worship sitting on the couch, eating a bowl of cereal. So a lot of people, it's right up their alley to file unemployment and not go. But to those that have that drive and that desire, that is that season kind of hurt us. So we're ready to go. Now it's like, okay, go. You're ready to go. So I know it's going to be disliked, especially this generation, in our culture, and especially the Black church that needs every working part working. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel him, I understand it, and I agree with his statement that if you sit at home watching streaming service and your church is having in-person worship, I would stand to reason a lot of it is just not about safety.
Yeah.
Now, again, I agree that we should be streaming for various other reasons.
Absolutely.
There are people.
It's an important ministry.
It is a very important
ministry. It should be the complement.
Right.
To in-person worship.
Right.
It should be the companion.
Right. And not take its place.
Right. And what we're doing is that now the stream is become the main attraction. The stream is now the burger, and in person is the fries.
Right. When it should be the other way around.
So I think that with technology, because there are some concerns in terms of some people with certain pre-existing conditions and seniors.
And I get it. And those I get it. And for that, that's what I'm talking. But
But most of them would want to come if they could.
Right.
If they didn't have the pre-existing condition, they wish they could be there. But then you have younger,
right.
You know, and I'm an elder millennial.
Right.
I'm one of the older millennials, you know.
Old model millennial.
Right. You're right. Version 1,
Yeah.
you know, the mid 80s, you know, and, but our millennials and the Gen Z and,
right.
you know, all this different stuff,
right.
it's, you know, they're going headlong into, hey, just
stream
virtual.
And here's what here's what my mind is.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let me see you in Papados on Thursday.
Correct. Be consistent.
And then
because I see him everywhere else.
Right. And then see me a message on. So I said, and I got an opportunity to speak at the anniversary service of a good friend of mine, Pastor Collins, and I said it's amazing that our vaccinations work.
Mm-hmm. Everywhere else.
But on Sundays they don't kick in quite right. You
right.
know? Or our vaccinations work when when we're talking about going to
mm-hmm.
see the Texans or
mm-hmm.
or the Rockets. Right. But they don't work when it's time to, get into his
house. I guess, when they said it was 96% safe and effective, it was
that's the 4%.
The 4% was the church house.
Yeah.
But again, it's a convenient all-purpose excuse that okay, now it's somewhat acceptable by the larger society, mm-hmm. which half of America isn't going to church anyways.
Right.
It actually just dropped below 50%, according to Pew Research. 47% of Americans regularly attend religious services, and this isn't just Christian churches. It's just overall religious services.
Right, because I think the same article was released in the Gallup as well,
mm-hmm.
And they might have quoted the numbers from Pew Research, but yeah, and that's for the first time since the numbers have been recorded.
Mm-hmm. That it's ever, that it's ever happened. Yeah. But the funny thing is this: in the Black church, they had some specific stuff. Is that while in person has dropped, the online virtual models, there's double the participation from the virtual Black congregation than the virtual white congregation.
I can understand.
Double.
I can understand.
Yeah.
But even that number shouldn't exist, because again, that points to what Pastor Carter's saying. Because a lot of that number.
That's why I'm just focusing it in terms of our community.
Right.
It's impacting Black churches the most.
Right.
So that means that our community is making the largest use of the excuse.
Right. 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 And if we're doing that in the spiritual area of our life,
right?
Just imagine how much more it is in those other anything that's going to be that I'm responsible for. That's going to be an obligation
mm-hmm.
that I'm going to have to get up and and do and go and be.
Mm-hmm.
So not just church,
right?
But school
mm-hmm.
and work. And anything
family obligations, whatever, so on and so forth.
Anything else is going to be,
but they're catching that flight.
Absolutely,
they're hitting Cancun.
Yeah.
They're on that cruise. Oh man, I can't. It's just a lot of people. But the same person that says, "Oh, it's a lot of people. I'm just trying to be cautious." They're booking Carnival Cruise Lines.
Right.
To be on a moving piece of metal in little tiny rooms,
stuck with people and which when COVID hit, it hit cruise lines the hardest.
Yeah.
And so again, as a culture, and even those that are listening, and
let's just be consistent. That's my deal. Let's just be consistent.
Absolutely.
But what happens is that we don't want to take accountability. So if there's a way that we can wiggle out of it, and to your point, in terms of the entitlement and the victim status,
mm-hmm.
We've got to get away from that, because otherwise you'll always be able to find somebody that's victimizing you.
Right.
You're always going to be able to find someone that's taking something away from you, but yet you're never putting yourself in a position to be victorious, and you're not putting yourself in a position to not be entitled, but to earn
right,
something
right,
to come your way.
right. Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. That poor me,
right.
you know, well, I mean, get up and make it different. And again, and I tell you know my boys all the time, you want to see a change,
be a change,
be a part of the change you want to see. Like, I mean, it's not going to happen by osmosis,
right?
And then you can't expect anybody else to create the change,
right?
If you're not willing to, you know, participate in the process that makes it, you know. So,
right.
You know, again, it's just, you know, when I read this and I thought about I mean, for kicks and giggles, I want anybody that's listening that argues with me, try to go to McDonald's after 10 o'clock. I mean, there's been but one night I found one that had no line. Thought I'd hit lotto.
Closed.
Got up to the window. She says, "We're only doing online, you know, like Uber Eats orders."
Oh, wow.
They were understaffed because I mean,
wow.
Why go to work? It's COVID outside. And I believe, and it's become
maybe it's COVID outside.
Yeah. I believe it's just become that excuse.
Yeah.
Just that excuse.
All purpose.
And I'm not trying to make light of the lives that COVID took.
Correct.
Or you know, or the, you know, the people that got sick. You know, my heart bleeds for the families that lost multiple people.
Correct.
In one family. But you know,
but let your yay be yay
and your nay be nay.
And your nay be nay, because you can't say it on church. I behave one way according to one set of rules,
right.
But then the stuff that I have a desire to do,
right.
that I make exceptions to those rules,
right.
Be consistent in your application.
Absolutely.
Now, if you're that way, I've had a gentleman that works in the same office with me, and he's very consistent. He's still, to this day, he was never vaccinated, but he's diligent about wearing his mask all the time. And whether that's going out to lunch, whether that's in the office, wherever he goes, going to church, he wears that mask even to this day. And he's been consistent through the last, year and a half, that I've known him.
Right.
And he's been consistent in his application.
Right. And I'm with it.
You see what I'm saying? We don't go to Papa Do's, then all of a sudden masks come off and,
indeed,
all this different stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Consistency.
Right.
But.
Right. And I'm with it. I'm just, that, and here's how, to culminate Jerry Carter's statement. Here's how you are lazy and you're using COVID as an excuse. If you can't go to work because of COVID, but you go to Seasons 52, then you're lazy.
Yeah, 100%.
Or if you can't go to church because of COVID, but you can go to Junior's football game, same COVID that's outside for that is outside for everything else. And so, again, I just thought his statement was unique because usually our culture, community church doesn't say stuff like that. We'll think it, but truth be told,
right? Exactly.
We don't want to say it. And so when I read that he said it, I was encouraged. So and again, our criticism is constructive. It is to make us better. Correct. It's to make us look in the mirror and say, I can do this better. I can be better. Speaking of looking in the mirror, and I want you to kind of update us, on what's going down with the ongoing feud that is now busted out into social media and podcasts. Oh yeah, between DL Hughley and Monique.
It's all over. And so basically, we have two comedians that have been in the game over 30 years. Each one of them.
Both OGs.
One a king of comedy, one a queen of comedy. And there was a show in Detroit, and there was somehow a contractual dispute. Okay. And normally, if there is a contractual dispute in whatever line of work you're in, that's not something that you handle in front of clients.
Right. Right.
That's not something that you handle in front of customers.
Right.
You know, if you're at work and your paycheck was wrong, you wouldn't be at work in front of a client, be like, you know what?
Yeah.
These sorry.
Yeah.
blank, blank, blank. Mess up my contract. Do you know what they are doing, to me, so on and so forth. And so basically, Monique decided to air out a grievance in front of the customers, in front of the clients. So instead of following her performance agreement to perform comedy for people that wanted to get away and have a brief moment of escapism from everyday life.
Right. What I paid for.
Right, which is what they paid for. That's the product that they paid for.
Right.
They arrived instead of the comedy show and her, set, they arrived at her airing her grievances with the comedy industry, with the promoter of the show, with another comedian, which is DL Hughley, that was headlining that particular show. And she decided to let everybody know that due to some contractual dispute, she was under the impression that she was supposed to headline the show and be the highest paid artist and things of that nature. And that DL Hughley had done some dastardly deeds behind the scenes to somehow rob her of the spotlight and rob her from, the prestige of being the headlining artist, comedian. And talked about him, his sexuality, his wife, his dog, everything. And somehow, some way, she found a way to make it around to Lee Daniels, Steve Harvey, Oprah, and everybody that's wronged her in the past.
From Kenny Gordon on to present day.
Absolutely. And so, all the way. So burn the stage down, and everybody got to hear Monique yell at them about her complaints about this contractual dispute. So she decided to not only do that, then also took it to social media afterwards. DL Hughley responds by posting his deal memo, which is, the document that details his performance agreement that, hey, the promoters have hired you as the artist to be the headliner, and that you have approval over who is on the show and for how much time and things of that nature. And so that he was the headlining artist. So there's just been a bunch of back and forth, and other comedians have weighed in. I've seen Ricky Smiley weigh in heavily, things of that nature. And basically we have Monique coming from a sense of entitlement that because years and years and years ago, she at one point was one of the queens of comedy. At one point, was did win an Oscar for her role in Precious as Precious's mom. At one time, yes, she did have the TV show that went for, I think, over 100 episodes, 5 or 6 years. But basically, she's not happy with her situation.
Right.
And her status in Hollywood.
Right.
And this was just a straw that broke the camel's back, because she feels wrong that she was told she was going to be the headliner and she wasn't, and DL Hughley, much like the slap, DL Hughley got the brunt of everything that's ever happened to her negatively in life and career.
Right.
And so DL Hughley posted his receipts and said, look, this is my contract. I got everything on my contract. If you didn't get what was going on in your contract, your problem's not with me.
It's with whoever.
Your problem is with the promoter, whoever signed the contract, and it's between y'all, the teams on each side and the lawyers on each side.
Right.
But she's directing this at DL Hughley because she perceives that he's the one, as the artist, that stole the prestige, but the contract not with DL Hughley.
Right.
The contract is with the promoter. So again, entitlement, victim status, you know, and
instead of, and,
Yeah.
you know, and I said this a couple years ago when she blew up.
mhm.
If you want things to be different, and I just like you got to be that change. So I know the initial thing that caused her to go in on everybody else was that Netflix special, and Netflix offered her a certain amount of money.
Mhm.
She thought that they lowballed her. So here's how you can make that change. Like if you're Monique,
Mhm.
create your own tour.
Right.
Go city to city back then. And again, you've done it before, so you can do it again. Sell out some major venues, make your own set of money, force Netflix to see, hey, we got to offer her this because this is what she's already doing.
Mhm.
But Monique approached the situation with that sense of entitlement. Because I did this 15 years ago,
Mhm.
now I'm owed this now.
Right.
And again, I had a good iPhone 15 years ago. But like, what if I tried to use the iPhone right now? It would be no good. And that's what, like, my only issue with her, and I'm saying only issue. I have an issue that she directs her venom at people that have nothing to do with nothing. But another issue that I have with Monique is, like, in her head, she's placed herself on a certain run of talent.
Right.
And again, I know people will say that it's the difference between male and female. This is not gender bias at all.
Right.
I like Monique.
Mhm.
I like her comedy.
Mhm.
But if you ask me, you got one night you could hear one comedian.
Mhm.
Would it be Monique or DL Hughley?
DL Hughley.
Without question.
Without question.
So you on a certain run of talent, you got to know.
Right.
You know, and again, your issue with the contract is your issue with the contract, and I totally get it. If that's what you were told and offered,
Mhm.
and that's what you should have got, and that's what you need to legally pursue
that. Right.
to get. And I'm not, whatever.
Right.
But you got to know in your head, like, you're nowhere in. I mean, you could be on the same card with a DL.
Right. Right.
But it's DL.
Right.
He's,
And I think part of the situation with Monique, I don't think she understands that what people are paid in entertainment is based on their ability to draw.
Right.
Draw is what the house brings in. Ticket sales.
Right.
Monique, in my opinion, I'm just going to go ahead and preface this as my opinion. First of all, I'm not a big Monique fan. I think, her work is not that she doesn't have funny moments, but it's the same thing over and over. She's not dynamic, in my opinion, and she doesn't have a wide audience. She has a very small audience that has not and probably will not grow. My personal opinion.
Okay.
So, because, because of that, that puts you at a particular status. Period. Full stop. One of the big reasons that she was mad at Netflix is because they offered her $500,000 to do a stand-up special or some type of program.
Right.
Amy Schumer, who's another female comedian, was offered $11 million to do a similar program.
Okay.
When Monique found out that she was offered $500,000
mm-hmm.
and they offered Amy Schumer $11 million, she was incensed. Okay. And that's what started the whole Netflix deal.
Okay.
But Amy Schumer, I'm not a big Amy Schumer fan. I don't have a problem with her. But she has a wider audience.
Right. Okay.
It's just a fact.
Right.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's right now. Right. I'm saying this is what's happening. Right. Okay. Netflix perceives that there's a greater value in a wider audience for Amy Schumer. So they're willing to give her more money because they are betting, they're investing that they will get more money out of that. And so then Amy Schumer negotiates from the 11 to 13 million, done deal, stamped. Now she's even more mad.
Right. You're right. Okay.
You know, but like you said, instead of resting on your entitlement of, well, I've achieved these accolades years and years and years ago. So on the basis of what I've done in the past, you should now pay me this in the present. But when you're a performer, and it's the same thing in corporate America, if you're in sales and you're in management, it's not what you've done, it's what you're doing.
Right.
In the words of the great philosopher, Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately?
Right. And you see it in the industry because, again, if I had to rank the comedians that I currently listen to, that I would currently want to hear, DL would be at the top of that list, right? But I don't think DL has the draw to sell out Toyota Center.
Which is like 25,000 seats or something like that.
But Kevin Hart, who I don't like to hear as much,
he's going to sell it out.
On a bad day.
But why? Wider audience.
Right.
Wider audience.
Right.
Is because DL's a different kind of comic.
Right.
He's a more thoughtful comic, and Kevin Hart is a more mainstream comic.
Right.
You know, so me personally, my top guy, I would put Dave Chappelle.
Right.
You know, as far as just all around, who's the best comedian in the world today? You know, for me, Dave Chappelle. So if it came down to, hey, you can see one comedian, before you check out of here, okay, let me see Dave Chappelle.
Right.
That's the deal. But when you look at, there's a lot of space between, again, in my opinion, but I think also my opinion is shared by a lot of other people.
Right.
Is that there's a lot of space between DL Hughley and Monique.
Right.
On their ability to draw.
Right.
And Monique just needs to come to the realization that maybe it's not that everyone is against her, because it can't be that everybody else but Monique is wrong and trifling and trying to be out to get her.
Right.
It can't be Lee Daniels and Steve Harvey and Oprah and DL Hughley and Will Packer and the media and the patriarchy and all these different things. It can't be everybody else.
My grandmother used to have a saying. My grandmother, who had a 8th grade education, would say, if it's more than 3, it must be me. So if you got an issue with 3 people or more than 3 people, the issue ain't them.
Right.
It's
you.
I mean,
yeah. And so, but again, that takes accountability. That takes, wait a minute, what am I doing that's making me so difficult to work with?
Right.
And I think the reason that she won an Oscar for playing Precious's mom is that she wasn't playing a role.
I think DL
she would. I don't know if he did or not. This is just, if he did, I'm not quoting him. Yeah. This is just, I'm just, stating my opinion, is that I think, and that's the only role really that she's really known for, in terms of like excellence, in terms of worthy of an award, is that she really wasn't playing a character.
Right.
She was just being herself with the volume turned up and a spotlight turned on.
Right. And see, here's the danger of, and I'll say, but here's the danger of when you're looking at others and comparing others to yourself. So she looked at Amy Schumer and looked at herself like, but you never look, we'll look up, but we won't look down.
Right.
So you don't look at, okay, I have it better than
some more.
Or I have, you're saying I don't have it as good as, and that's the danger of looking at all.
Right.
That's why, and I can't remember what book I got.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
It is because they train horses to run with blinders on.
Yeah.
So you're focused on running your own race,
right,
and not looking at the race of others,
right.
And I think in this generation we just look We're too busy looking at others.
Mm-hmm. Because let's say, for instance, she could have taken that deal or negotiated from $500,000 to $1 million.
Right.
Right. Let's say she takes $1 million.
Right.
It does well. Netflix makes money. You think they won't come back with $5 million next time?
Especially knowing
what you just did.
Because you can easily go to some other
Hulu. You can go to Peacock. You can go to, Paramount Plus. You can go to all these. Everybody's got a streaming service now. You know, you could have gone to all these different platforms or done it yourself.
Absolutely.
You could have done it through YouTube. You could have put out your own independent material, and then you wouldn't have to worry about distribution. Right. You are the distribution.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now you're making even more money because you produced it yourself and you distributed it yourself.
And now I ain't gotta split with nobody. So even if I get half of the distribution, since I took the risk on the production and I'm taking care of the distribution, I'm getting a bigger piece of the pie anyways. So yeah, it's a smaller pie, but I'm getting a bigger piece. Right. Right. So I'm getting more up. And again, here's my frustration with our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe we have the creativity and the ingenuity 100%. Enough to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have the mindset, like we're fearful of failing. So you look at someone like a Jeff Bezos.
Mm-hmm.
Says, I'll create my own lane.
Right.
Or somebody like a Michael Dale.
Mm-hmm. But that's the difference. The difference is this: are you willing to risk it for the biscuit? Because that's what makes a difference in terms of entrepreneurship.
Right.
Are you willing to put your money where your mind is?
Right.
Are you willing to invest in yourself and say, you know what, it's going to cost me $15,000. I've got to risk $15,000 on me and my idea.
Right. But I believe in myself
enough.
Right.
And then, hey, you win some, you lose some. And as Papa Friday say, you live to fight another day.
Hey.
You know?
And there's so many different stories of.
Because Jeff Bezos could have stayed at his comfortable corporate job and we never would have heard of him.
If I'd have said his name today, you wouldn't have known it.
Wouldn't have known it. But he decided to risk it.
And there are other, black and brown people that we can look to say that did. Tyler Perry's one.
Tyler Perry. Now he's building some huge mansion. Ridiculous.
He's built a legacy, not just for himself, but he's blessing others from the legacy that he did. And he went from homeless to having it all.
Right.
And it comes to work and it's difficult. And I wish I could just jump into the mind of Monique for a minute, and not just her mind, but a lot of, minds of, black and brown folk say, hey, look, you have the ingenuity to do it. You have the creativity to do it. But do you have the heart and mind and belief to do it?
But here's what happens is one of two things. Either A, we're too scared to go do it. Number one. So then we work for somebody else and then they get to take the credit.
Right.
Or we risk it. We get it to a certain point, but then there's going to be somebody's going to come along with an offer and they're going to say, hey, you did a good job, kid. Let the professionals take it from here. And they're going to pay you what seems like a lot of money at the time, but then you sell off your idea and they take it multinational, huge level
and run with it.
And you're sitting there kicking yourself.
Right.
How could I have let it go for that much? There was I think it was a Tyler Perry movie, Acrimony.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Where the main character just believes that he's got this idea.
Right.
And he believes in this idea so much that he's not going to let it go. And it even cost him his marriage. But finally, the big break comes.
It pays off.
And it pays off in a major way.
Yeah. Man, I heard something Sunday, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to give a shout out to, and she doesn't know how much she is a hero in my mind. I'm going to keep, pushing her. Cynthia West. right? So Cynthia West is a member of the church. She's over our missions ministry, and so she did a presentation on Sunday, did a little short talk, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Cynthia West said, "It moved me. It's moving me now. 3 days, 4 days later." Cynthia West said, "If your vision is reachable to you,
mm-hmm.
it's an insult to God."
Wow.
Because he never gives you anything you can reach in your own power.
Right.
And I think sometimes, like, we're just so used to, like, okay, well, I can do that. Well, if you can do it, it's not a God-inspired vision.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
If you can achieve it yourself, in and of yourself, it's not God-inspired. If he inspires it, it's going to be something you need him to accomplish.
Right.
And a lot of times I think he placed things in us that we need him to accomplish it because we're so scared of failure.
Mm-hmm. Failure.
And what that failure looks like is like, I'll settle for what I can do instead of reaching for what, God can do through us.
Right.
So again, I promote Black people all the time, but I look at the events of Monique and I'm like, this is just not a good look.
It's not.
It's not a good look.
It's not a good look. Because again, it just goes to serve the victimhood, the entitlement, the lack of accountability. There's some things that Steve Harvey says and does that I don't necessarily agree with, but one thing I respect about Steve Harvey is his hustle. This dude's got 17 jobs. I mean, this dude hosts, 13 shows, and he's got this and he's got that, and he's working.
He has a line of everything.
Right.
I want you to see the creativity in a Steve Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a man that wrote a book about relationships and marriage, who's been divorced. It was a New York bestseller. People went and got it's almost like me. I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't have a business. If I wrote a book about entrepreneurship, I wouldn't expect anybody to buy it.
Right. Because,
I out of experience, I don't know anything about it.
Right.
I can read, get some information and recite that. I mean, that's it. But like, Steve, who's been divorced, writes a book about marriage. People go buy it. It's just the creativity of he has his own line of clothes.
Right.
He has his own line of cigars. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Really? Okay.
Through Rocky Patel, he has his own line of cigars.
Okay.
Yeah, and Ray Lewis does too. And they almost partnered to do it. But it's like he went from smoking cigars to having his own line of cigars. It's like the creativity and entrepreneurship because he never stopped at no.
Right.
And I think sometimes like Monique gets a no, and instead of letting that no be the fuel that she needs to get to a yes, then it's just that I'm appointed everybody. I'm the victim, so it's your fault.
Right.
It's your fault.
Right.
It's your fault. You did this, you did that. And again, there's this sense of entitlement, like someone owes you. I
one of the positions that I had in the past, now I'm in automotive and financial sector, but I used to work in telecommunications. One of the jobs I had was in business and government accounts. And one thing I think is valuable, very valuable for any, young person growing up is to be told no a lot. So you learn to shake it off. In that particular job, I was told no dozens of times a day.
Right.
Dozens.
Right.
But it's helpful in sales in a corporate environment to have what we call thick skin and a short memory. When it happens enough, you're conditioned by that thick skin to where no longer means no.
Right.
No just means not now.
Right.
Or I need more information.
Right. And
And I was. But we don't want to tell kids no.
I was told by this, and I would consider him a mentor as well, who, insurance sales.
Mm-hmm.
He said, with every no, that means you're one answer closer to your yes.
Right.
So okay, it is what it is. Another good read that, if you haven't read it, John Maxwell's Failing Forward.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because, it increases your capacity to, hey, look, this didn't work. Now I'm better because now I know what didn't work.
Right.
And it makes you that much better. And so again, I just looking at that, it only speaks to a greater volume of life. And again, I'm praying for Monique because I like her and I want to see her succeed.
Right.
But I see the moves that she's making, and we can learn from other people's experience. And so I definitely want my culture and environment to people in my environment to learn from.
And even though she's not my favorite comedian, I share with you because here's what I do understand is that Monique is a celebrity, and she is, for some young women, a role model.
Right.
And they would seek to do the things that she's done,
right,
and walk on the path that she's blazed.
Right.
And I would pray that out of this situation with DL, that they would figure out a reconciliation, and that Monique would change how she moves, right, and change how she operates. Because in the moment, to vent and release your venom, out on the watching world and directed at DL Hughley and the promoters and whatever, I'm sure that made her feel good.
Right.
I'm sure she felt justified, that she perceived that she was wronged in some way. So she wants them to feel the pain and the embarrassment that she felt. What she may not have realized is that also you put forward a model of how a lady should conduct herself when facing adversity.
Right.
And that is not the model.
And that's not the model, especially when you are the minority.
Right. Because, and again, that just, because I felt like with the slap, it just brought us down and held us back. With this situation,
a greater slide
brought us down, held us back. Greater and it's slide. Just like,
slide.
Yeah.
Greater slide. So again, thank you for joining the TBT show this week. I'm excited about kind of stuff we got coming up. Next week we'll be talking about family and especially family in our culture and what that all means as we face a generation of redefinition of family. And our guest will be the Royce Robinson of marriage maintenance in a minute. I'm excited about conversation with Royce on next week. So again, join us. If you have some things that you want us to discuss and throw around, please forward those ideas to the emails that are attached to our Apple podcast. If you're on YouTube, if you follow that link down, you'll see email. You can send any kind of thoughts or ideas to that email. Again, we're just trying to tackle and address today's topics in light of timeless truths, in the words of Sean Aguilar. So again, Sean, you got anything you got coming up you want to shout out real quickly?
Man, not at the moment. Just praying for our children. School's letting out. So now you have children that are going to be, at home. So just praying that they're kept safe throughout the summer until the next school year. And, just praying that that our legislators would take heed before session's over, that they would, enact laws that are in the best interest of the people.
Right.
Because I'm not sure the exact date on when session closes, but I believe it's rapidly approaching. Because then once it's going to kick the can down the road, wait for everything to die down, and back to regularly scheduled programming.
Absolutely.
Until
the next shooting. So very sad. So very sad. So again, if there are any kind of community events that are going on, we'll do our best to find out and post those so that we can keep our children active and engaged any after school or summer programs. I will add links of that as well to keep our kids engaged. Shout out to New Life Missionary Baptist Church for making 1 year. 1 year of serving our community, doing our best to serve our community. So thanks again so much to make that celebration a success. And again, I'm looking forward to Royce on next week, and we kind of discuss some of the issues in our communities as family and marriage is concerned. And so please join us on next week. But until next week, again, grace and peace to you all. And I pray you try to make this day the best day of your life until God gives you another day.